Welcome back to the 21st Century Man podcast. This is the show where we really get into the weeds, taking a deep dive into each chapter of the book, The 21st Century Man. We pull out the key insights, the actionable stuff packed inside.
That's right. Each chapter, piece by piece.
And today, we're turning our focus to chapter 49. This one's all about the health benefits of CBD.
A really popular topic these days.
Definitely. So our mission here is simple. Really unpack what this chapter says. We're sticking to the sources, the experiences shared right there in the book.
Yeah, drawing directly from the text itself.
In this chapter, it feels incredibly relevant right now, doesn't it? I mean, it hits on health, stress, performance. These are huge things for navigating the world today.
Absolutely. It feels like the world just keeps getting busier, more connected, more demanding.
Exactly. And the chapter explores CBD as, well, a potential natural tool for dealing with some of these really modern challenges.
It's definitely a topic that's moved, from the fringes into the mainstream conversation. And this chapter, the contributions from Adam Wenger of Element Health, gives a really concise but detailed look at why all this attention on CBD now.
Right. And how it opens is quite striking, isn't it?
It really is. It sets the tone immediately with that Willie Nelson quote. The biggest killer on the planet is stress, and I still think the best medicine is and always has been cannabis.
Wow. Yeah, that's a bold statement to start with, almost provocative.
Totally. And then, bam, the chapter immediately grounds it. It jumps into this personal story, which I think makes the whole discussion feel much more relatable right from the start.
I agree. Starting with that quote, it makes you think differently straight away. And then this personal anecdote, discovering CBD in 2015.
Yeah, after, 15 or 20 years of using medical cannabis?
Right, which back then mostly meant THC-heavy products, for sleep, anxiety, workout recovery, the usual suspects.
But the results, as the chapter says, were often mixed.
Exactly. Mixed results. So sometimes it helped, maybe, but it wasn't consistent, wasn't reliable. And then the switch to CBD.
And the contrast described there is, well, it's stark. Really powerful.
It really is. After that first dose of CBD, the experience reported was specific and profound, exceptionally deep sleep, something that wasn't happening consistently before.
Okay, deep sleep. That's a big one for many people.
Huge. And also feeling this greatly increased capability for dealing with daily stress. Not just a little better, but like a real shift.
So going from mixed results with THC to these really significant, impactful benefits with CBD.
Yeah, that's how it's presented. Almost transformative.
And that personal story, it's such a critical starting point
Yeah.
because it immediately throws that key difference into sharp relief, the difference between THC and CBD.
Which the rest of the chapter really digs into.
Absolutely. For a lot of people, cannabis, marijuana, weed, hemp, it all gets kind of lumped together. But the chapter makes it crystal clear. Understanding the distinct effects of THC and CBD is vital.
Okay, so let's unpack that distinction then. Based on the chapter, what exactly is traditional cannabis or marijuana?
So the chapter explains that traditional cannabis plants, especially the ones grown for recreational use historically, are typically bred to be high in one main compound, THC, delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol.
Got it. THC.
Right. And THC is the compound that gives you the psychoactive effects, the high, the stoned feeling, the buzz.
Mm-hmm.
That's primarily THC doing its thing.
Yeah.
That's why people use recreational cannabis usually.
Okay. But the chapter points out a potential downside to that THC effect, right? Even if you're using it for stress relief, it's not always positive.
Precisely. The source highlights this key problem. While THC can relax some people, and it does, for others it can actually do the opposite. It can enhance stress, trigger anxiety, even paranoia.
That's tricky.
It is. And the chapter emphasizes this isn't just about how much you take. It depends a lot on the specific strain of the plant and, really importantly, on your own individual body chemistry. Even your mindset when you take it can play a role.
So very variable and unpredictable for some people.
Exactly. That variability is a major reason why THC-dominant cannabis can be problematic for certain individuals or situations.
Okay, so that's THC. How does CBD oil fit in? Where does it come from, and why is the experience different?
So CBD oil, that stands for cannabidiol, is extracted from different strains of the cannabis plant, specifically hemp strains. And here's the crucial difference, as the chapter lays out. These hemp strains are naturally low in THC. They just don't produce large amounts of it like the plants grown for the recreational market. That genetic difference in the source plant is fundamental.
And that leads to a different experience when you consume it.
Totally different. Because it's low THC, The chapter emphasizes that most people using CBD oil report experiencing only positive effects, and the big one. There's no high or buzz. None.
No high, so you don't feel intoxicated or stoned?
Right. Instead of that psychoactive trip, the effect described is more like a general calming effect that lowers the noise. It's subtle. It's about shifting your internal state, not altering your consciousness dramatically.
Lowers the noise. I like that phrase. It feels very relatable.
It really does. And the chapter connects that directly to the pressures of modern life, which is where it ties back into the book's themes.
Oh, so.
Well, it links that lowering the noise effect to the constant stimulation we all face. Living in big cities, high-pressure jobs, we're just bombarded.
The 204/7 technology thing.
Exactly. Always connected, notifications, pinging, emails, news, social media. It never stops. The chapter talks about so much stimulation, keeping us in this state of perpetual high alert.
Like your nervous system is always switched on.
Right, which makes it incredibly hard to truly relax, disconnect, or just be present. You've always got that internal chatter or external stuff pulling at you.
It feels like stress isn't just for certain jobs anymore. The chapter suggests it's almost become the default state.
That's the point it makes. Stress used to seem limited to specific groups, maybe executives or students during exams. But now, it affects pretty much everyone. An ultra-fast-paced society, the chapter calls it.
And it even mentions kids feeling the effects.
Yeah, even children experiencing the adverse effects. The overall feeling described is this widespread sense that no one is immune from feeling disconnected. That internal noise, that high alert state, it's like a symptom of this modern inability to switch off.
So in that context, finding something natural that helps quiet that noise helps you feel more present and capable without making you feel out of it. That sounds incredibly valuable.
Absolutely. And that brings us back to the author's personal experience mentioned at the start.
Right. They call full-spectrum CBD an essential tool.
Exactly. An essential tool for experiencing what they call an optimized, healthy, and connected version of themselves. And the appeal, as described, is using this natural plant compound that doesn't make you high or lazy or foggy.
It's not slowing you down.
No. Instead, it's framed as a support, something that helps you maintain composure in daily high-pressure situations by managing that underlying stress response. It lets you think clearer, be more resilient.
And the sleep benefit, too. That was the first big one mentioned. The chapter really emphasizes that.
It definitely does. That's a key benefit highlighted repeatedly. CBD can vastly improve the quality of sleep.
But it's not like a sleeping pill, right? It doesn't just knock you out.
That's a crucial distinction the chapter makes. It says it doesn't cause fatigue. It's not a sedative in that forceful way. The idea, based on the research cited, is that it works by reducing cortisol levels.
Cortisol, the stress hormone.
Right. High cortisol keeps you alert, wired, makes it hard to fall asleep or stay asleep. By lowering cortisol, CBD potentially allows your body to naturally ease into deeper, more restorative sleep. It's supporting your body's own sleep processes by reducing stress, not chemically forcing sleep.
That makes a lot of sense. Addressing a root cause of poor sleep for many people's stress. And the chapter goes further, suggesting CBD is generally quite safe, even benign. It mentions use in vulnerable groups.
Yes, it makes a really strong statement there. It says CBD is, in essence, so benign that even children with intractable illness find benefit.
Wow. And that's backed up by research mentioned.
It is. The source specifically references a study from Tel Aviv University's medical school, reported in the Journal of Child Neurology, a reputable source.
What did that study involve?
It followed 25 young participants aged 1 to 17. These were kids with complex neurological disorders, serious conditions.
Okay.
They were given medical cannabis preparations, likely high CBD formulations given the context, and the reported outcomes were pretty striking. Significant improvements in things like spasticity and dystonia, those are movement issues, also better sleep, less pain, and just better overall quality of life.
That's significant improvement in tough conditions.
Very. But here's the kicker regarding safety. The study found that adverse effects were rare.
Rare adverse effects in such a young, medically fragile group.
Exactly. That finding really speaks volumes about the general safety profile as presented in the source. It strongly supports that description of CBD as benign.
That definitely paints a picture of its gentle nature. Okay, so beyond sleep and stress, which seem like the obvious fits, the chapter also mentions some maybe surprising benefits during the day.
It does. You might think CBD is just for relaxing at night, right? But the chapter notes that, surprisingly, taking it during the day is reported by some to improve clarity, focus, and just a general sense of well-being.
Interesting. So it's not just about calming down. It might actually help with mental performance.
That's the suggestion.
Mm.
It implies the effect isn't sedation, but maybe helping the brain function better by reducing that background noise we talked about,
Yeah.
allowing for more focused presence.
Okay, so how does one compound do all these different things? Sleep, stress, focus, even helping with those complex neurological issues. The chapter points to something called the endocannabinoid system, right? What is that?
Right, the ECS. The chapter explained it's a fat lipid signaling system. And get that, it's not some minor thing, it's fundamental. It's found in all vertebrates, fish, reptiles, mammals, us.
All vertebrates. Wow.
Yeah. And it was discovered way back in the 1940s, apparently, though we've learned much more recently. The reason CBD seems to affect so many different things is because this system, the ECS, is involved in regulating an incredibly broad range of bodily functions. It's like a master controller.
How broad are we talking? What does it regulate?
The list in the chapter is huge. It helps regulate major systems, immune system, nervous system, gastrointestinal system, plus hormones, metabolism, muscles, even bones.
Okay, that's pretty much everything.
Almost. And on a more specific level, it affects processes like memory, appetite, sex drive, blood pressure, pain sensation, inflammation, immunity. It's just woven into the fabric of how our bodies work.
So it's like this massive regulatory network keeping things in balance.
Essentially, yes. It's all about maintaining homeostasis, that internal equilibrium. And the chapter suggests that taking external cannabinoids like CBD works by optimizing the ECS. It's not adding something foreign necessarily, but giving your body's own balancing system a gentle nudge towards balance, helping things run smoothly when they're out of whack.
Understanding the ECS must have really changed how people view cannabis over the years.
Oh, absolutely. The chapter touches on this big shift. For a long time, cannabis was mainly seen negatively, the drug association, potential psychosis risks, but discovering the ECS within our own bodies. That, plus all the research that followed, studies, clinical trials, it's led to a dramatic rethinking.
So it's moved from just being seen as a recreational drug.
Right. Now, a growing number of scientists and doctors see it, or at least components like CBD, as a potential wellness adjunct, something valuable for supporting overall health and even performance.
And the ultimate conclusion from all this ECS research, according to the chapter.
The chapter states it pretty clearly. The ECS itself and the cannabinoids our bodies make, endocannabinoids, and those from plants like cannabis, phytocannabinoids, are of paramount importance in human health. Paramount importance. That's a strong statement about how fundamental this system is.
Okay, let's loop back to THC versus CBD again, but through this ECS lens. The chapter explains how they interact differently with the system, right? That's key to their different effects.
Yes, exactly. That's the physiological nuts and bolts of it. Both THC and CBD are cannabinoids from the plant. But when they get into your body, they interact with the ECS receptors, mainly CB1 and CB2 receptors, found all over your brain, nerves, immune cells in very different ways.
How does THC interact to cause the high?
THC produces the high because it directly binds to and activates or stimulates both CB1 and CB2 receptors. It fits like a key and turns the lock. This activation triggers effects in those cells and systems, leading to the feeling of being high, but also other effects like pain relief or munchies.
And CBD. The chapter says it doesn't do that.
Correct. It explicitly states CBD does not bind and activate those receptors in the same strong way THC does. That's why no high. Its interaction is more subtle, modulating.
Okay, so if it's not activating them, what is it doing? How does it have an effect?
Well, the chapter explains that instead of directly stimulating, CBD seems to interact differently. It might actually reduce the binding strength and effect of the CB1 receptor. It's like maybe making the lock less sensitive or slightly interfering with THC's key.
So it's modulating the receptor's activity, dampening it down?
Kinda, yeah. And by doing that, the chapter says it leads to the suppression and reduced release of several neurotransmitters.
Ah, so it's influencing brain chemistry indirectly. And the chapter links this mechanism, this sort of inhibitory effect, to the benefits.
Exactly. Researchers think this modulation of the CB1 receptor and neurotransmitter release is why CBD might help with things like anxiety and insomnia. It's not just a vague calming effect, it's potentially a specific interaction within the nervous system, helping regulate activity and promote calm or better sleep patterns. Subtle systemic regulation.
That explanation of the mechanism really clarifies how it could work so differently from THC. Okay, so based on these characteristics, reducing anxiety, helping sleep, reducing inflammation, what specific conditions does the chapter say researchers are looking at CBD for?
Well, based on those mechanisms, the chapter lists Quite a range. Beyond just general anxiety and sleep, because it impacts inflammation and neurological activity, they're looking at it for things like schizophrenia, epilepsy. We mentioned the kids study chronic headaches, migraines, and movement disorders like dystonia. Basically, conditions where rebalancing neurotransmitters, calming nerve signals, or reducing inflammation could help.
And it doesn't just list possibilities, it mentions findings from official reviews too, like Health Canada.
Yes, and that's significant.
Yeah.
It pulls out findings from Health Canada's 2018 review, which was done to guide legalization up there. So it's evidence considered credible by a major health authority.
What were some key findings from that review highlighted in the chapter?
The list is pretty impressive. It mentions potential for improving quality of life in palliative care and for chemo patients, likely helping with pain, nausea, anxiety. Potential for delaying disease progression and reducing symptoms like tremor and spasticity in MS and spinal cord injuries. Huge impact on mobility there.
And epilepsy.
Big one. Strong evidence for reducing seizures in epilepsy, which is where CBD has already seen formal medical approval in some cases.
What about pain? That's a massive issue.
Definitely. The review cited promising results for chronic pain and neuropathic pain, that tricky nerve pain, and crucially, the opioid-sparing effect.
Opioid sparing, meaning it helps reduce the need for opioids.
Exactly. Helping manage pain so people need fewer or maybe even no opioids. And also potential for treating osteoarthritis symptoms, likely through managing inflammation and pain.
That list from Health Canada really grounds the potential in documented research, and the chapter sort of reflects on how exciting this potential is.
It does. The author says the potential for CBD to address such a wide range of complex issues, neuro stuff, chronic pain, inflammation, and especially its potential to cut down reliance on opioids, is undoubtedly exciting. That opioid angle is huge, given the crisis. Finding safer ways to manage pain is critical.
Okay, so let's shift from the science and potential benefits to how people actually use CBD. The chapter talks about products, right? What are the common ones?
It identifies tinctures as probably the most widely consumed form.
Tinctures. Just to be clear, what is that exactly?
It's described as a concentrated solution of CBD bound in an oil base, usually hemp oil or coconut oil, like MCT oil. The CBD is extracted from the plant and dissolved in this carrier oil. Makes it easy to measure with a dropper and take, usually under the tongue for fast absorption, or added to food or drinks.
And the way these tinctures are made is key to separating them from, say, smoking regular cannabis.
Absolutely key. The extraction process for CBD tinctures is designed to pull out the CBD but leave only trace amounts of THC, often below the legal limit. The whole point, as the chapter says, is getting the body-mind benefits from CBD without the psychoactive effects of THC.
Okay, which is a sharp contrast to just smoking cannabis flower.
Totally. When you smoke flower, you're inhaling everything THC, CBD, other minor cannabinoids, terpenes, flavonoids, the whole mix. And the chapter points out a major pitfall of smoking. Besides the obvious issues with inhaling smoke, you're at the mercy of the psychoactive effects from THC.
Right, and that unpredictable THC effect we talked about earlier?
Yeah.
The chapter had a name for it?
Yes, the biphasic effect of THC. Really important concept. It means the effect can change completely depending on the dose.
How so?
Well, the example given is clear. A low dose might calm you down, which is what some people want, but take a higher dose, and that same THC could flip and actually increase anxiety or paranoia. That dose-dependent switch makes THC effects much less predictable than the more stable effects reported with CBD.
So tinctures, being low or zero THC, avoid that unpredictability. But the chapter says there are different kinds of CBD tinctures too.
Yes, it mainly distinguishes between two types, broad spectrum and full spectrum.
Okay, broad versus full, what's the difference?
So broad spectrum is processed to remove pretty much all the THC. It aims to keep CBD and some other beneficial compounds, but specifically target THC for removal. Zero detectable THC is the goal. Full spectrum, on the other hand, also reduces THC way down below the legal limit, like 0.3%, but the goal is to leave all the other naturally occurring stuff from the hemp plant in there, other cannabinoids, terpenes, flavonoids. It keeps the plant's natural profile, just minus most of the THC. The chapter notes Element Health, the contributor, offers full spectrum, which hints at their preference.
And does the chapter say one is definitively better?
It doesn't declare a universal winner. It acknowledges people have different needs, but it does lean towards a holistic view. It says something like, nature has a beautiful process. Benefits are most apparent when consuming the natural product as a whole.
Suggesting the full spectrum might be preferred.
It implies that the synergy between all those compounds in full spectrum, what people call the entourage effect, might be more beneficial for some than just isolated or broad spectrum CBD. the idea that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
That makes intuitive sense, the entourage effect. Now, the chapter also specifically links this clinical research back to the book's audience, men in midlife and beyond.
Yes, this is a key connection for the reader. It explicitly states that clinical trials have confirmed the efficacy of CBD and CBD-THC for conditions relevant to health issues men often face in midlife and beyond. It shows this isn't just abstract science. It applies to them.
And it lists a whole bunch of these conditions where research looks favorable, covering physical and mental neurological stuff. Can you give a few examples?
Oh yeah, the list is long and really shows the scope.
Physically.
Things like asthma, autoimmune disorders, COPD, maybe helping manage cancer symptoms, chronic bronchitis, diabetes, high blood pressure, insomnia, skin stuff like psoriasis, rheumatoid arthritis, sports injuries, general workout inflammation. Lots of things that become more common as we age.
And neurologically or psychiatrically?
Equally broad. Potential benefits mentioned for ADHD, anti-aging effects, we'll get to that, anxiety, depression, bipolar disorder, dementia-related cognitive issues, epilepsy, fibromyalgia pain, migraines, MS, Parkinson's, PTSD, general stress, Tourette syndrome. I mean, it covers mood, neurodegeneration, chronic pain, stress, major quality of life issues.
Wow, that is an incredibly diverse range of conditions. It really drives home how fundamental that ECS system must be.
Doesn't it? And how supporting it might have really far-reaching effects.
The chapter then kind of zooms in on a few practical applications that are particularly interesting right now.
Yes, it highlights areas seen as especially significant. Pain management again. Addictions treatment, another huge issue. Those anti-aging benefits. And it mentions specifically affecting COX-2 pathways and reducing oxidative stress.
Okay, quick explanation. COX-2 and oxidative stress.
Sure. COX-2 is an enzyme involved in inflammation and pain. Common painkillers like ibuprofen work by inhibiting COX-2. So, mentioning CBD affects these pathways suggests a potential mechanism for its anti-inflammatory and pain relief effects, maybe similar to conventional drugs, but acting differently. And oxidative stress is basically an imbalance between damaging molecules like free radicals and your body's ability to neutralize them or repair the damage. Too much oxidative stress is linked to aging and chronic disease. So if CBD helps reduce oxidative stress, that directly connects to potential anti-aging benefits protecting cells from damage.
Got it. Protects cells, slow aging. Makes sense. Now let's dig into that pain and addiction part again, especially that statistic. What's the consensus among doctors mentioned?
The consensus cited is that CBD usually doesn't totally fix chronic pain or addiction on its own for everyone. It's not presented as a magic bullet cure.
Okay, not a magic bullet. But there's a significant finding about pain and the risk of addiction.
Yes, and this is where it gets really interesting, potentially game-changing. The chapter says that while CBD might not erase severe pain completely, research suggests it does lower pain enough to significantly reduce the risk of addiction. Specifically addiction to opioid painkillers.
That's huge with the opioid crisis.
Absolutely critical. The idea is that using CBD for pain might help people avoid starting opioids altogether or use much less, sidestepping that path to dependence.
And there was a statistic tied to this.
Yes, the source mentions stats pointing to a 50% success rate in this context. Now, success here seems to mean success in reducing opioid use, preventing it, or supporting recovery in a way that lowers addiction risk.
50%. How does that compare to typical addiction treatment success rates?
The chapter provides context. It compares that 50% figure to typical 5-year success rates for traditional alcohol drug treatment programs, which are often cited around 10%.
10% versus a potential 50%.
Right. So the chapter calls that 50% figure noteworthy. It suggests CBD could be a really valuable tool alongside other strategies for managing pain and mitigating opioid risks, an area where we desperately need better options.
That is definitely noteworthy. Did it mention a separate statistic about using CBD in addiction treatment itself?
Yes, it did. It says about 20% CBD has been useful in the treatment of both alcohol and drug addiction. The wording's a little ambiguous, could mean a 20% CBD concentration product was useful, or maybe a 20% success rate using CBD as part of treatment. Either way, it points to CBD potentially having a direct role in addiction recovery itself, beyond just the opioid-sparing effect with pain, another layer of potential value.
Okay, let's tie all this back to the bigger picture, the book's theme, the 21st century man. The chapter concludes by relating CBD to overall well-being and modern life stresses, right?
It does. It brings it back to homeostasis, the body's natural drive for balance. And it notes how modern life constantly disrupts this balance. poor diets, not enough exercise, constant overstimulation, bad sleep habits.
And when that balance is off, how does it feel, according to the chapter?
It says when homeostasis is compromised, we just don't feel like ourselves.
Hmm.
This might show up as depression, anxiety, or just a general feeling of being disconnected, body, mind, spirit, all out of sync. That off-kilter feeling.
And the chapter contrasts that with how people often try to cope.
Yes, it points out the common traps, chasing quick fixes with junk food, too much alcohol, drugs, endless entertainment, seeking temporary relief.
But that doesn't really work long term.
No. The chapter explains a positive feeling is short-lived. It's just a distraction. Afterwards, you often feel worse, creating this destructive cycle, feeling bad, seeking a quick fix, feeling worse. Repeat. It paints this as a real challenge, especially for men feeling stressed and taxed by modern life, losing their vitality.
So against that backdrop, CBD is presented as a different kind of tool, one that supports balance instead of just providing a temporary escape.
Exactly. The conclusion is that for some readers, exploring CBD could be a key to breaking that destructive cycle, helping them feel younger, healthier, calmer. Full-spectrum CBD is framed as a valuable natural tool, not the only answer, but a tool to help support the body's own systems in restoring balance.
By helping with stress, sleep, inflammation, it helps you feel more present, more resilient, more productive.
That's the idea, helping you be more capable in your daily life.
And that ties right back into the book's goal, helping men navigate modern challenges, providing tools and insights to become their best selves. Exploring CBD based on this chapter's research and perspective is part of that journey.
It absolutely is, and that's the value of the book. It tackles these important, sometimes misunderstood topics like the ECS and CBD, giving readers solid information from credible sources to consider for themselves.
Definitely. And, this deep dive, it's just scratched the surface of one chapter.
For sure. To get the full picture, the whole approach in the 21st Century Man for optimizing health and performance, you really need to read the whole book. Chapter 49 is great on CBD, but it's one part of a much bigger puzzle.
The chapter does mention resources like elementhealthsupply.com for products, but the core info we discussed today is right there in the chapter itself.
Exactly. Reading the book gives you this deep dive material plus insights on so many other essential topics for thriving today.
Well, this exploration of Chapter 49 has certainly given us a lot to chew on. From the ECS, the THC versus CBD difference, the potential benefits from research, that compelling data on pain and opioid risk.
It really underscores how understanding and supporting our body's own systems, like the ECS, might offer more natural, non-impairing ways to handle the unique pressures of the 21st century.
So here's a final thought for you, our listener, to ponder. Drawing directly from this chapter, if our bodies have this built-in system, the ECS, designed to keep almost everything in balance, could supporting it with something like CBD fundamentally change how we approach health and well-being? Instead of just reacting to symptoms, how might using tools that promote this underlying balance, as discussed in the 21st Century Man, affect your daily ability to feel present, resilient, and truly thrive in today's demanding world?
That's a really powerful question. Moving towards supporting foundational systems, rather than just chasing symptoms, that feels like a crucial perspective shift for health in this era.
Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into Chapter 49 of the 21st Century Man. We really hope this look at the health benefits of CBD, as laid out in the book, has been informative and given you some things to consider.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in and exploring this chapter with us. It's why the book is such a great resource diving into topics like this.
And definitely join us next time, right here on the 21st Century Man podcast. We'll be turning the page to Chapter 50, tackling another incredibly relevant modern issue, electronic addiction. We'll see you then.